Sometimes they simply strolled along the air corridors over this sprawling city, demonstrating their aerial prowess in a somewhat playful manner as they played peekaboo among the billowing clouds. Once again, in real time.
In order to closely examine the aerial prowess of the UFOs, one of the most dramatic segments was loaded into the Inovian computer.
He comes across the screen, he just abruptly stops and backs up and zips into the cloud, backs out of it, goes in again, peeks out, and goes out. Again, it's the motion is not recognizable as that of an aircraft or a helicopter.
During this computer examination, another remarkable discovery was revealed.
So, I mean, yeah, right there. Go back
Down
there,
there?
right there. What is
Right
that?
in there?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really looked at that before. Let's zoom in on it and see. Oh boy, it sure looks like a hockey puck kind of shape, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think you've just found a second object in this picture.
Let's go back to the original shot.
Compare shapes.
Now move the cursor down from that object we just examined. Let's go to the other object underneath it. See that right
Down
there?
here?
Yeah, let's see what we can find out about it.
Something there.
So we may have
Right
a
there.
third object.
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Not only was the craft demonstrating flight capabilities unknown to modern physics, but there was more than one object in this footage, and it dematerialized within a fraction of a second.
Everybody's been watching him play peekaboo in and out of the cloud, and nobody really paid much attention to down here. And that is definitely another object right there, where the cursor is. Look how bright he is.
What is
On
that?
that frame. There, that frame there, then go one more frame, one more frame, one more frame, one more frame. Look at that. You change brightness level, then it dumps right off. In one frame, 1/60th of a second, that sucker changes intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And now look at it fade out.
What would begin as a normal single sighting would soon develop into an extraordinary series of events. The cameraman and his friend are stunned. Words cannot describe what they are seeing and recording. It is unlike anything seen before. A transparent container with circular objects stacked inside. A flashing object appears below the container. This draws the cameraman's attention.
Se alcanza a ver algo que brilla.
He zooms back for distance reference.
Tenemos puntos de referencia.
Two new ships catch his eye.
Brillante.
There are now 3 ships in the viewfinder.
Y son varios. Estoy viendo varios.
Mr. Icar detects movement in the upper right corner of his viewfinder and pans the camera towards it. The hollow grinding sound is that of his tripod.
Acerco el zoom.
A cluster of unknowns are above the three below.
Son brillantes. Deja la cámara sin mover. Uy!
The cameraman is overcome with excitement with the massive aerial display. And he should be. For the first time ever, a camcorder has recorded daylight footage of an armada of unidentified flying objects over a major metropolis. Note, the two objects above the AM reading on the screen will merge and reappear as three. Also note the gravitational interaction they display with each other.
There appeared to be 17 to 23 of these objects in the same image. We grabbed a single frame. As he tilted the camera up, we stopped with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 prominently visible in the picture. If we go in and zoom on this one here in the middle, we see our hockey puck shape. We get a little more information up here. This object had more than 4 scan lines on the original camera. We can see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 and 10 up here. Let's just take this area here and take the color information out. Let's enhance the contrast. Now we can go take a look at it and see if they appear, if any more things appear to us. Now we get the idea of what the normal sky should look like at this point. And the object here doesn't appear to show any atmospheric disturbance or anything around it. Helicopters, things like that would. This object doesn't appear to be moving very fast at all. It's not emitting any great amount of heat because the heat waves are pretty apparent when you get into this type of thing that we're doing with the computer here. There's the other one. It's almost like they're fading in and out. If we were to take and release, say, 4 white balloons up in the sky and let them float up, you would expect to see all 4 of them look very similar. They'd all have the same intensity and whatever. There's no real explanation for 4 balloons being in the sky, one showing to the camera with contrasts like this, and other ones like this, unless this one was way in the distance. However, the size of this object is the same as these. The other problem we had with it being balloons is if all of these were just floating up in the sky, then the direction of motion would be vertical. They would all be fairly symmetrical. They wouldn't change relative to position to each other as they floated up. When we look at the live video, several of the objects appear to move up and down. Some of them go side to side and do a side to side motion, and the others don't move at all. So if this one is floating up and this guy starts moving horizontally and then stops, it kind of dispels the balloon theory.
As the new year approached, the ovnis continued their march through the skies over Mexico. From valleys and from rooftops, camcorders in hand, the people of Mexico continued to document and witness the most astounding UFO events in history.
The intensity of the ovni activity over Atlisco, had prompted the first UFO-related press conference to be held by an elected official in Mexico. When asked what the Mexican government's position on UFOs was, he replied,
"Neither the government nor the military feel threatened by the unknowns. We don't know what they are, but they do exist, and like everyone else, we are curious."
So were the ovnis. They seemed to be strangely fascinated by the transmission towers, as depicted in this footage taken by Mr. Del Calejo from atop his apartment building overlooking the sprawl of Mexico City. H. David Froning, an aerospace consultant, speculates about the object's attraction to the transmission towers.
We, in our own planetary explorations, are extremely interested in any energy patterns emitted from places or things. We might assume that other explorers could be interested in even the simple Hertzian waves that our radio transmitters emit. In this respect, getting closer would be better, because signal strength is much greater closer in. And things such as amplitude and frequency modulations and beam patterns can be measured much more accurately in the so-called near field of antenna feeds. Thus, we might speculate that someone somewhere is adding to their database of electromagnetic signatures from various emitters on planet Earth.
His attention focused on the object darting around the radio tower. Mr. Del Calejo continued to record as a commercial airliner approached. Then, as if guided by an intelligence that recognized the close proximity of the oncoming airliner, the OVNI moved out of the way. Another airliner approaches, and it moves again. The possibility of onboard guidance, illustrated by unique flight characteristics, had been seen in numerous videos. While closely examining other videos with transmission towers in view, another startling anomaly was discovered. Something again appears and vanishes in 1/30th of a second. Comparisons were made between the OVNI to the right and above the tower and the object that appeared to be near the tower. Surprisingly, the digital enlargement detailed the shading and pixel similarities between the two images. Given this unique ability to materialize and to vanish in an instant, but of all the multiple sightings, none compared to Mr. Feria, who had taken dozens of videotapes of UFOs, including this fascinating footage taken shortly after the 1992 Independence Day Air Parade. Unlike the 91 air show, where the OVNI flew beneath the fighters, this UFO waited 10 minutes after their passing before making its presence known.
No muevan la camioneta. ¡Ay, güey! ¡Te viene para acá! ¡Cállense, no muevan! No muevan. No lo veo bien así, de forma de triángulo. Ahí dale. Ahí dale. Está detenido. A ver, podemos ver. Mira, 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 mira. Aquí, ya. Así, así, sí. Así. Look it. Take it off the left. Nothing to do. You see it? You see? Ese es un avión, señores. Un avión no da la vuelta. Un avión no da la vuelta. Bueno, pues ya.
Pero entonces se está retrasando.
Ahí se va a apagar. ¡No!
¡Ay, qué maravilla! No puede
¡Se apagó! Lo tengo todavía. Todavía lo tengo. Ahí está.
The nightly aerial displays moved to the northwest over the world's largest metropolis, Mexico City. In a sleepy village north of Mexico City, barking dogs attract the attention of a father and a son who enter the night to investigate. Spotting a silent, stationary aircraft above the street lights, they position their camcorder and zoom towards it. This unknown was unlike anything seen before. A unique ring of lights positioned around an invisible hull. The Mexicans were becoming accustomed to seeing strange objects over their city, like this unusual craft that was videotaped by Arturo Diaz Solano at 10 a.m. in May of 1992. Utilizing split screen, the two segments were placed side by side for comparative analysis. Were these video recordings of the same ship, or were they two similar objects operating over the same territory? With each new video came more questions and answers. The unknowns had once again captured the attention of Mexico's population and media by reinforcing their presence over Mexico City in June of 1992. Afternoon sightings were being recorded by camcorder clocks on a regular basis. At times, their flight characteristics defied common logic and modern physics. The people, encouraged by an open press and popular radio and television shows, trained their camcorders skyward with incredible results. On June 12th, an unknown is tracked headed northeast. And once again, the object demonstrates an unusual flight pattern we have seen before, stopping in midair, reversing itself, then continuing on. New skywatch groups, armed with binoculars and camcorders, anxiously waited as an amazing story began to unfold, centering on one patient man who was producing an abundance of extraordinary video. His afternoon breaks were spent atop an office building where he scanned the murky skies above the city, searching for and finding the unique flight characteristics of the unknowns. Demetrio Feria's keen eye and diligence had paid off. By the end of June, he had taken 9 videotapes of unidentified flying objects. In this segment, shot on June 25th, The unidentified object appears to be rotating at 90 degrees. Note, the top of the object changing from white to black, as it rapidly moves through the cloudy sky. 2 days later, on June 27, the ovnis reappear over Mexico City. Again on June 28, and again on June 29. June 1992 had been a spectacular month for both sightings and video recordings. 14 videotapes and 4 35mm photographs were taken, making this the second most prolific time of the ongoing aerial show taking place over Mexico's capital city. The UFOs over Mexico were etching an important place in the history of ufology. On New Year's Day, the ovnis came calling. The first recorded sighting was at 2 p.m.
Ya nada más.
The suspense builds as 2 more ovnis are clocked over the city at 3:51 p.m. and 5:21 p.m. By now, the city was ablaze with excitement. People stopped in the streets to observe the aerial displays. Traffic backed up on Avenida Reforma, the major thoroughfare, as people abandoned their vehicles to watch the unknowns hovering over their city. Even the police were mesmerized. Entire families were drawn into the unfolding drama. Some registered disbelief, others awe. At 6 p.m., the unknowns were still visible. They had now been over Mexico City for 4 hours. The following day, major newspapers carried detailed articles. The photographs were riveting. There was also photographs of the ovnis. Major newspapers carried headline stories of how the ovnis had greeted the new year above the capital city of Mexico. One headline read, "Amazement of the people living in the capital after the presence of 3 assumed UFOs." Another, "Expectation in the large city for the UFOs." And still, "Astonishment, UFOs in the sky." And finally, "Expectation for strange objects in the sky of the capital." On one New Year's Day, Mexico had lost their age of innocence. And today, the population of Mexico is faced with a choice that the United States confronted during the summer of 1952. In July of that year, 14 unidentified flying objects made low-level passes over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Tracked by radar, the initial reaction was to scramble fighters. But when the Air Force jets entered the same sector as the unknowns would vanish from the radar screens. Then they would reappear later, and this went on in a bizarre game of hide and seek. The following day, the White House and Pentagon were flooded with phone calls. Major newspapers headlined the story on the front page. And under the insistent demands from the nation's press and accumulating pressure from the public, the Chief of Staff set up a press conference at the Pentagon.
Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
This would be the first and last official press conference held by a United States government representative on the subject matter of unidentified flying objects. Like Washington, D.C. in 1952, the airspace above the capital of Mexico and the surrounding areas have been inundated by unidentified aircraft. To date, the officials and citizens of Mexico have not found it necessary to attack what they did not understand. And we can only hope that in the future, they will continue to demonstrate the courage that is necessary to have an open mind.